It's about 3 minutes after. I just want to do general introductions here. There are a number of folks here. This will be a joint presentation between myself and Steph. We represent information services and all the different units, but there are two different topics we want to talk about to those who joined. One would be the Rits, or Research IT Support, which is a group dedicated to effectively assisting researchers in their computing needs, from software development to grant writing with technical components, estimation, creating websites, things of that nature. And then we want to talk about the recent M365 transition and what type of services or that are available to campus community, both students, researchers, staff, etc. I just wanted to do a brief introduction here around the table for those who are present. So my name is Max Ivanov. I represent a number of different units, but one of them is Research IT Support, which is responsible for software development for research. We have Akif, who is the team lead of that group. And then we have also Louisa present, who is our Jane of all trades. She's a web designer, project coordinator, web developer, you name it. And then we also have Steph Wang here, who represents the training and support group. And she'll be talking about the M365 and what it offers to the campus community. So I'm going to start off. I will not go through the full deck. I will probably quickly run through a number of slides when it comes to Research IT Support group. Just bear with me here. So just to do a quick little introduction, Rits, or Research IT Support, is a group that basically, as I mentioned, provides research support to the researchers on campus. So we do everything from software development to web design, as well as provide estimates and grant writing proposals, things of that nature. So we do function on a cost recovery basis. So most of our core services are offered at cost, at a price to you. We can discuss about estimates and things like that. But we do offer a number of free services. One of them would be, for example, assistance with grant writing that has technical components. For example, if you need to estimate the cost of developing, let's say, a mobile app or website for your project, or estimating computer costs or costs of computing, or if you need some assistance in terms of procuring computing resources, whether it's servers, storage, GPU, things of that nature. So we do some things that are, pro bono, free to you, but the development part and web design and so on, that would be a cost at a cost recovery basis. And again, if you have any questions, by all means, feel free to reach out. We do have contact information available in the slides, as well as the PDF would be available through Stacy. So Research IT in our activities. So we do everything from software development, both web, desktop, mobile. We assist with managing other projects. We do web design. We do all kinds of things. We assist with evaluating IT security, technical risk, you name it. There are many other things we do. They're not explicitly listed here, but we are involved in many different projects across campus. So the Rits team shrunk a little bit just because we had some internal changes, but it comprises of the team lead, who's here with us today, Akif, and we have a couple of software developers, and we're recruiting more, as well as Louisa, who's our resident project coordinator, graphics, web designer, you name it. Just a quick little highlight of some of the projects we've been involved in, developing, supporting. So there's online therapy unit, there's PSPNet, there's projects like PSP, PTSI. We had projects that involved computer vision, algorithms that detected pain from images, and with the intent to notify clinicians that a non-verbal person is experiencing pain. So this was a joint work between a research team at the University of Toronto, who created a pain detection algorithm. We integrated with clinical observation software and try to improve it, make it use GPU, and so on. So that was an interesting project. Another interesting project our team has been involved in is the biomass project, where there was pictures of forests from the top, as well as drone footage, 3D drone footage, and the intent of it was to classify the the type of biomass that is present in the forest in the case, determine what type of trees there are that exist by segmenting the pictures based on color and then determine the type of a tree it is and how much biomass it has, the amount of growth and so on. So another cool project. We've been involved in the Imagineer project, which is a teaching entrepreneurship to budding entrepreneurs. It's available to everyone in Canada. We've been involved in PSP mental health projects of various types. There's lots of other websites, projects, applications, mobile, web, etc. Many others. I'm not going to mention them all here, but they're all here. And just wanted to, again, give you the ways to contact us if you're interested in our services. So you can reach us by email, phone, fill out a form, or even submit a footprints ticket. We can get back at you. If you're unsure, again, still just reach out. We can try to direct you. If it's not something we can assist you with, we can direct you to the right spot. Yeah, that's pretty much my presentation about Rits services. Does anyone have any questions? Nope, does not look like there's any questions here. Okay, I'm going to stop sharing. And I will let Steph talk about so we just a bit of a, I guess, segue. University of Regina recently have switched from GroupWise to M365, and that brought on a number of changes, and some of them are related to file sharing and various services around Office 365. And I'm going to let Steph talk about the different things that are available to you as both researcher, student, or staff, things like OneDrive, Teams, SharePoint, and things of that nature. And then I'll talk a little bit more about some caveats that are present with the use of these services. So things like data retention, things like quotas, so the amount of storage you can use, and so on. So I'm going to let Steph take over.
Hey, Max. I'm going to share my screen. Start. Good morning, everyone. So we with after the migration, we have more tools, especially with OneDrive, Teams, and SharePoint. So, but still, there are some. They are all like a cloud-based storage place. So I just, as introduction, I would like to introduce the differences between the three of them. Because at the beginning of the migration last year, we first had access to OneDrive. We didn't have access to the Teams from the very beginning after the migration. And back then, I did like introduce OneDrive as like a file share place. But with the introduction with Teams and SharePoint, with anything like work-related files share or co-authoring, I would highly recommend Teams and SharePoint. So OneDrive is more of like a personal storage place. It's kind of like our own house. If we don't invite, if we don't invite to share anything to others, it belongs to us. Belongs to us. Everything within the OneDrive, it's our property. But it also integrates these certain places that you can, if someone shared with you from Teams and SharePoint, you can access directly from your OneDrive too. So that's the OneDrive. And for Teams, it's considered as like a digital office place where we talk with our colleagues, where we co-authoring on the same files and the folders with colleagues. So that's the Teams where we could really communicate and collaborate. For SharePoint, it combines all the Office tools and also extends the applications provided by Microsoft, and also it integrates web. So SharePoint is kind of like one environment, integrates everything for us so that we can share information and collaborate with our colleagues. We can consider SharePoint as like our digital U of R campus. So for the file share convenience, we store majority of our files and folders in the network drive, such as like a T drive. With Teams and SharePoint and OneDrive, we can like maybe start to consider or do some like start with mini project to I'm not like saying to move everything from T drive to Teams and SharePoint, but like start from like small mini projects or any research program that you are working on, so that you really need to communicate with your partners or your interviewees for your research program, or if you really need to you need your research partners to upload or co-authoring lots of files and folders with you, then you can consider to use Teams and SharePoint. And instead of like using the T drive where we cannot co-authoring actually, Teams and SharePoint would be a wonderful place to do. So like in general, for collaboration, for file share, as long as we consider we consider like what folders we would like people to have access to and who would like to share or co-author with. And because there is like a version history on Microsoft 365, we can really keep track of the version history of any like of editing done by our partners or by the interviewees for your research. So all those things, if you are working on such featured research projects or even some processes that you are working with your colleague, both internally and externally, Teams and SharePoint would be a great place. With SharePoint, because it is kind of like an intranet, it's kind of like our UR source. So for anything we need to share the information, if there is any news or events, SharePoint and Teams would be a good place for us to use. So I'm going to just to go directly to the SharePoint to show us how it looks like. To open up Teams. So by now, I think majority of us have used like the chat feature for Teams. And the Teams on the navigation part, this is the place where we use the collaboration the most. So for example, if you have a research program, project, you can create a team specifically for that project, and then you can set up the members. You are the owner, and you can add both internal and external accounts into your team so that you can communicate and upload everything within your teams. So for example, this is within a team, you are able to add like different channels. And there are like 3 types of channels. One is standard, which like any team member would have access to all your conversations and all the files and folders. For shared channel, it allows us to include the people within the team member, but also include if like, for example, if you are collaborating with people from different departments, you can include them as well into the shared shared channel. For the private channel, it's like a specific members within your team. If you need like more private conversation or more private communication on certain files, you can use these different 3 levels of channels to communicate and to work on things. And one more thing, specifically here, I would like to say to create a team. So if we watch YouTube or if we go to official Microsoft website, the team creating team for our institution, we have to use a template. For students, they have a different template. For staff, we have to use this one. And for the storage space, once we go in and if you choose anyone, any type of team you want to create, we can see the size of the storage is 100 gigabyte. And for students, I think it's probably about like 25 gigabyte. But don't worry if you need to expand. You might need, you can contact our IS and we would be able to expand it subject to the needs. So that's another thing I need to mention. So there is a best use case I would like to introduce us to. So if there is a project and you work both internally and externally, what we can do, you come here to request a team. And then use that after that team is set up, you can add like internal, like you with the people with our account to add them as a member. And once you add them as a member, then you can go to the different channels, set up different channels for different topics, and then upload files. And directly, we can go to the SharePoint site. So here. Open SharePoint. Directly, we can go to the SharePoint site. Over here. Go to the SharePoint site. So over here, if you really want to, if you need to, I click here. If you need to share folders and files with external users, what you can do is just like to create a new folder. For example, if I share it with external user, what we can do is to create a different folder so that you can just share that folder with external user. For example, if I type in my personal Gmail address, and then you can change the different access for the external user. Either they can edit, upload, or just they can only view, or they can view but they cannot download. And after that's that you create that, you can click send. The external user will receive a one-time code in order to access that folder that you share with them. So that this is a very convenient way for us to manage different types of files, whether we want to share with internal users and external users. So the document library is the basic file sharing and file storage place for us to work with. And if you have some files, you want to create another document library, we can do that as well. So by just a click, going back to home. And if you click new, and we can create another document library. So right now, everything we upload in Teams is automatically syncing to SharePoint. But if within SharePoint, we can have more files and folders that particular live in SharePoint. And so for example, if I just say test library, and I create. So it's kind of like within your same team SharePoint site, you can have different document libraries so that you can store different files. I have one set up already for us. So this is called like a flat document library, because the flat document library is kind of like more modern look. And if we click on the grid view, we can edit just like we can edit things within Excel, or if you want to like drag off the things like what we do in Excel, it just make it easier to manage all these files, to easily search anything from these files. So this is a document library within the SharePoint. And for SharePoint, it's also a site, right? So everything we have on the team will have a SharePoint site. So if I click home, that will be a SharePoint site. But if we want to communicate with more broader audience, then we can submit a ticket to create a communication site. So I'm just going to show us how that communication site looks like. I have a sample TTS communication site. So for the communication site, very similar to our URL source, we can share the information. We can have like the news. If I want to pronounce, there's upcoming training available for the campus, I can just publish the news and I can list all the team member at the bottom. And it's very easy to set up the communication site. It looks very modern and looks similar to our URL source, and everything like we copy, including the link. If we copy from the existing URL source to the SharePoint site, communication site, those links also works too. I have, here's also I have one SharePoint site page I can show us where, well, I was working with HR the other day for example, if there is any like new employee onboarding. Page, we can create that. And all these links, if you copy from your source, it'll be copied and workable within your SharePoint site. So it is very convenient. Yeah, so that's about all of like there are so much more functionalities within SharePoint and Teams and OneDrive. So the more we use, the easier you will find you can manage these tools. So if there is any use case that you don't know how to use these tools in order to make your workflow better, you can always feel free to submit a ticket to contact us. Otherwise, that's all. Any questions regarding this? If there's no question, I'll hand over to Max so that you can add a little bit more to the research side of things. Thank you. You are muted. Thanks. Sorry.
Oops, I'm sorry, Steph. Thank you for providing a detailed introduction to the various services that are now available to campus community. I just wanted to kind of maybe focus on a few caveats when it comes to the use of M365 products. I guess my comments are coming from commonly asked questions of us. So it's just an example. General use, we recommend that OneDrive would be used for personal files, to an extent of, within the confines of the institution. Teams, we recommend you use Teams for collaboration with your staff, colleagues, students, and other researchers. As long as you can share files with other researchers, you can bring them into a team as long as they have a Microsoft Identity account. So they can be coming from a different institution. As long as they have a Microsoft account, you can still share things with them. And even if they have an email, they can do certain types of sharing as well. And SharePoint, think of it as more of an institutional knowledge repository, or for kind of like a mass consumption for both public use or archival purposes. Another common question is who gets to access M365 products through UVAR? Well, everyone, technically, whether you're student, staff, researcher, as long as you have a valid UVAR account, you get access to OneDrive. You are able to request a team created for your project or group or work unit. You can also have access to SharePoint, but SharePoint is reserved for staff or by special requests only. So this would have to have some additional sort of requirements as to why you would need a SharePoint. Typically, it's reserved for staff and organizational use. So when it comes to Teams and OneDrive, depending whether you're a student or a staff member, there are different quotas or limits apply. For example, if you're a student requesting a OneDrive or getting a OneDrive, you only get about 25 gigabytes of space. If you're a student requesting a Teams team, I guess, or group, your team would also have a 25 gigabyte limit for that group. So in terms of sharing files and information you can store there. If you're a staff member, researcher, etc., faculty, you would get, by default, you get a 100 gigabyte limit for both your OneDrive as well as any teams you create. And the limits will depend on the type of, when a group is created, there are several different templates that are available, whether it's a unit working group, student project group, or research team. And depending on the type of account, there will be different, in a template, therefore template, there will be different limitations applied to it. So an example, for a student, it's 25 gigs. For staff, it's 100 gigs. Small increases are possible by request, but they're based on resource availability. So if 1,000 people request increases, we probably would not be able to accommodate, depending on the increases. Another common question is, are there any institutional policies that require that you use OneDrive versus Teams versus SharePoint? I would say there are no policies at this point. It is a subject to change. And again, I would reiterate that we encourage that OneDrive is used for personal use, because, for example, if you or someone you work with needed to have emergency access to your OneDrive, that would require additional permissions from at least two VP level, or maybe it's AVP levels, because it is your personal files and we respect privacy and of your information. So I would say, if the intent is for this information to be available with others, use Teams instead. Because OneDrive, in case something happens to you, you lose account or you switch institutions, it'd be a lot harder for someone who requires this information to access it without additional permissions from within the organization. So again, if you need to share data with students, colleagues, others, use Teams, though OneDrive does allow you to share information as well. You should, as a researcher, you should be aware that some granting agencies may have additional rules around how data is to be stored or archived, for how long you retain it, where it can be stored, etc. Just so some grants may require that the data that you work with is stored only on Canadian soil. In this case, OneDrive or M365 would not be a good solution for it, because UVAR tenant, the actual repository of the data for UVAR, is in the United States. So we have an M365 tenant or an account that is technically on US soil. So something to be aware of as it pertains to your grants and things like that. Another common question is about what happens to the OneDrive, Teams, or SharePoint if any of the and its content, if, for example, the staff member or team members leave. So OneDrive will go away once the account expires. For example, if the student graduates or staff member leaves the university, technically their account expires, and therefore any shared files also go away. So this is another reason why we encourage, for work use, for research use, you switch over to Teams, because you can have more than one admin or owner of the Teams account, and therefore it's a lot easier to deal with staff and changes or group changes and things of that nature. For teams, teams go away if there's 6 months of inactivity or there's no owners. So you have about 6 months before they kind of disappear. You can also archive them, which would retain them for a lot longer, but then someone has to request that they be taken out of archive if you would like to get access to them as well. What happens when the team is deleted? What happens to the data if the team is deleted or the last owner of the team no longer has a valid account? So all chats, files, planners, whatever other tools you use within the team would also be deleted after approximately 6 months. You could certainly, again, if you need to have this information in the team available for a long time or stored for a long time, you should archive the group. It's a manual process. Otherwise, it will go away after about 6 months. Another common scenario, what happens if there was an accidental deletion of a Teams or an account? I would say that kind of goes away. There is a bit of a grace period where we could retrieve it. It's not guaranteed, but it's about a few months. So there's a bit of like a kind of like recycling bin functionality, but that would require manual intervention on behalf of IS staff. So if you remove information from OneDrive, Teams, or SharePoint, and it's within, let's say, a few months' time, it can be restored. Beyond that, it's gone. Yeah, and I think that's all the common questions that we get about OneDrive, Teams, SharePoint, things of that nature. Are there any questions about M365, its use? Oh, I see there's a question in the chat. The question is, what platform does the university prefer we utilize? Your source, SharePoint, when it comes to sharing files information? As a UR staff, but not a researcher. That's a good question. I think we're in this transition period. We do rely on your source quite a lot. I can't say what the future holds, but at this point, I think your source is the preferred method, as a lot of units don't have a strategic plan to switch anything to SharePoint, at least at this point, again, because we just literally switched to M365. So I think for the time being, your source is good, but some units are creating plans to move things into SharePoint and share things in that way. So I think the answer is, I don't think there's a strong preference other than just from the fact I think most units are using your source. But SharePoint may be potential future source for that sort of information.
Max, may I add one use
Absolutely,
case? Yeah. So for SharePoint, one example, Faculty of Education, they have the student to do the interns in different schools. So they have both internal and external users, because UR source it only allows internal users to access. So they built a SharePoint site so that both our students with the UR accounts and also the teachers or the different school division staff, they can access to the forms and sign the forms and upload those forms to us, which is a good use of the SharePoint site for both internal and external users. So if there is such case for your research or for any of the purpose you want to do, SharePoint might be a good option. And once you create that, because in the future, we are going to have a SharePoint hub, which you can just add your page you created now and to that hub so that you don't have to create that repeated procedures once again. Because any page, SharePoint page or site we are building now, you can always add and share it with others so that all people can share the information and have different levels of access to your site.
Yeah, thank you, Steph. Would there be any other questions from folks that are present? Nope, doesn't sound like there's any questions. That's all the information we have for you. Again, if you have questions, comments, etc., feel free to reach out, and Stacy will share the PowerPoint slides as well. So there'll be information how to contact us, both myself, Steph, or just the units. Again, thank you for joining. That's all the information I have. Over to you, Stacy.
Thank you, Max. Thank you, Steph.